Hello and welcome to FutureWings. My name is Alejandro Inchausti and it's great to have you here as you take your first step into the world of aviation. Before we get into what this course is about, let me tell you a bit about me and why I decided to build FutureWings. I was born and raised in Bolivia and spent 5 years living in Panama before moving to the United States to study aviation at Purdue University, where I got my degree in professional flight with a minor in Earth and Planetary Sciences focused on meteorology. I was 16 years old when I decided I wanted to become a pilot, but before that, I was really unsure about my future career, just like many of you might be right now. When I started looking into aviation, I found plenty of information online about what it's like to be a pilot, but there was not really a lot of explanation on how to actually get there. That's why I created this course to give you the real story, break down the process step by step, and help you decide if this is the path that you want to take. So, why did I choose to become a pilot? At first, I had a lot of questions and doubts, and I wasn't sure what career would fit me best. When I was around 16 years old, I wanted to be a physics teacher, and my brother wanted to become a pilot. And as he was exploring the world of aviation, I realized that I loved everything about flying, the freedom, the responsibility, and the unique lifestyle that comes with being a pilot. That decision then set me on a path that has taken years to study, training, and flying, and has been one of the best choices I've ever made. And then my brother is the one that actually went on and studied physics. So it ended up working for both of us. So now becoming a pilot isn't as simple as just hopping in a plane and setting on the autopilot like most people think. It takes time, you spend years training, passing written exams, and building flight hours. In fact, in the United States, you're gonna need around 1,500 hours of flight time to even qualify for most airline jobs. It also requires a decent financial investment. You'll pay for flight hours, instructors, check rides, exams, medical certificates, and more. Training often costs tens of thousands of dollars, and while there are ways to manage that cost, it's important that you know what you're committing to upfront rather than be halfway through your training and then realizing that this might not be the right career for you. Making sure that you're okay to fly is another extremely important step before embarking on your aviation career. As you can see on the table, um, you can do your entire training with only a third class medical. Once you reach your 1,500 hours, you're going to need a first class medical to start your airline job. If you are not eligible for a first class medical and then you find out that you actually can't get a first class medical once you're about to look for an airline job, then pretty much the last 5 years or whatever, however long it took you to get there are pretty much going to be wasted. Um, so I would recommend you get a first class medical in the first place to make sure that you're able to get it in the future whenever you have to renew it again, just to prevent you from having that problem in the future once you actually end up needing that first class. So ensuring that you're eligible for those types of certificates before starting your aviation career is pretty important. So now, how do you actually get there? Most pilots are going to start with a student pilot certificate, which then they're going to use to obtain their private pilot license. Then once you obtain your private pilot license, you're going to get your instrument rating, then a commercial pilot license, and then that's when most people decide to become certified flight instructors, which is the path that I took. It's the easiest way and the most rewarding way to gain experience and hours. And then some continue to gain their additional ratings, like their multi-engine rating. Um, and throughout, you'll progress through ground school, flight lessons, solo flights, and exams, and more. And it's a step by step ladder that builds your skills safely and gradually. Now, it's also smart to start thinking about how and where you're going to do your training. In the US, there are two different types of flight schools. There are Part 61 and Part 141 schools. Part 61 schools are more flexible. They're great if you want to train part time or at your own pace. Part 141 schools follow a structured curriculum approved by the FAA, good for students who want a more standard and structured path. Now, in terms of cost, Part 61 schools tend to be a little cheaper than Part 141 schools. However, the main difference between the two schools is that if you go through a Part 61 school, you will need 1,500 hours to qualify for your airline transport pilot license. Now, if you go through a Part 141 school, which is approved by the FAA, if you graduate from that program, you will need only 1,000 hours to qualify for something called a restricted ATP, which then allows you to fly, let's say, for an airline as a co pilot until you reach those 1,500 hours. And then once you hit those 1,500 hours, then you can get your normal airline transport pilot certificate. Now, the main takeaway is that both of them are going to take you and then to the same place, right? You're going to get the same licenses. It's just two different paths with two different types of schools, two different types of teaching methods, and different costs, right? So, looking and doing your own research into different flight schools that you're interested in looking for um, is going to depend on those factors. Another important thing is planning ahead, budgeting for lessons, check rides, and even living expenses. It's a pretty big part of becoming a pilot as well. Being a pilot means mastering a combination of technical and soft skills. On the technical side, you learn to fly the airplane safely, handle navigation, understand aerodynamics, and work with aircraft systems and modern GPS equipment. But just as important are your soft skills. Clear communication, quick decision making, teamwork with crew and ATC, and also staying calm under pressure are pretty important. These are the things that make a good pilot great, and they will set you apart in your training and your career. So, what's the training like? You're gonna spend time in ground school studying topics like weather, navigation, aerodynamics, aircraft systems, regulations, human factors, and some other topics. There's a joke in aviation that says when you become a pilot, you also become a doctor, lawyer, meteorologist, and mechanic because you have to master concepts related to those areas in order to complete your training. As far as the flight training itself goes, you're going to be flying the plane itself. You're going to spend time in simulators, practicing takeoffs, landings, maneuvers, emergency procedures, and more. You also learn how to plan a flight, check weather conditions, file flight plans, and work with air traffic control. It's challenging at first, but as you progress through it, it's definitely the most rewarding things that you'll ever do. Now, how that training occurs is going to depend on what type of flight school you go to. As I explained before, Part 141 schools might have a few extra classes about more topics that will take your aviation expertise, so to say, to the next level, such as gaining experience in advanced jet operations and other things of similar nature. Um, Another important thing to note is that depending on what flight school you go to, your they might take things at different speeds. So, for example, when I started my training, I did a few hours with my instructor, him pretty much getting me prepared for that one first flight. Now, I've heard of cases of people going up in the air with no experience whatsoever for their flight flight lesson. Now, that's going to be up to the instructor and the flight school. It's definitely doable and it's still safe. Now, the main thing is I have this concept in my mind that, as I also went through the same training that my students are going through, I want to, let's say, make their money's worth. So I don't want to take them on a lesson that they're not ready for if if it's not going to be a valuable lesson. So that type of thing is going to be up to the instructor and up to the flight school. Um, but the main core concepts, that's the ones that I want to cover during this course. So things like navigation, aircraft system, aerodynamics, and things like that. Those are things that are going to be covered in this course. So you get a kind of an idea. The point of it is just so you get an idea of the type of things that you're going to be looking at and the types of things that you're going to be expected to know. Uh, just so you get an idea of what the training is going to be like. So, if you take one thing away from this, is that becoming a pilot is an amazing adventure, but it's also a pretty big commitment of time, money, and effort. So before you jump in, make sure that you really understand what it involves and that you're ready to give your best. This course is here to give you the knowledge you need to make that decision wisely. So you can go into so if you decide to go into your training, you can be confident that it's something that you like and that you're going to enjoy. Now, because obviously I can't take you on a flight myself, I just wanted to let you know that there's also options to do something called discovery flights. So you can go to a flight school and things like that and ask them about discovery flights. And the way those work is that you'll go up with someone on a plane, and then they'll kind of show you what it's like to fly one of those small planes that you're pretty much gonna be flying for a long time before you get into an airline or a different type of job. But that's also something that you might want to look into if this is something that you're finding some sort of interested in. Thank you very much for joining me on this first video. If you have any questions about anything I've said or any specific questions that you would like to ask me, please feel free to contact me at info@futurewings.space. And thank you very much.